Hey, what's up, everybody? Wes here. I think everyone has an empty corner like this where they'd like to have some shelves. I did this really recently and it turned out really freaking awesome. Here's the outcome, and I'll show you really quickly how I did this. First thing you're going to need is a stud finder. In the corner that you're going to be placing these in, you just want to go ahead and see where the studs are that you can actually screw the bracket into that I'm going to show you later in the video. It's very simple, and I've got one right here, so I'm just going to make a mark showing where it's at. And the next thing I'm going to do is pick out where I want my shelves to go. I'm going to go ahead and pick the middle shelf here. I've got an electrical panel in the way, so I want to go right to the edge. So I'll make that measurement here, and I'll mirror the measurement on the other side. And then ultimately what I'm going to do is measure all the way across to determine the length of my shelf. So after we've made our mark, we'll measure our diagonal, and then that's the measurement that we're going to transfer over to our lumber piece. And the lumber that we're using here is a 1x4. You can see that I've already got it pre-stained, and you can pick any stain that you like. Here's my doggy Herc. And to start us off, let's go ahead and set the saw to 45 degrees. And you'll notice here on the mark it's at 45. We'll turn our lumber up on its side. We're actually going to scoot it forward and just cut the end off here. That way we start our shelf off at 45 degrees. And then the next thing we want to do is lay it flat with that shape pointing upwards, and then we're going to measure out. And this is going to be that diagonal length that we measured on our wall. So mine wound up being 17.5. It's going to be sitting at this angle right here. Kind of draw a little angle there. And that way, basically, the angles are perpendicular to each other, not parallel. That way, it's going to sit flush against the wall. So we'll go ahead and make our cut here. Again, we're still cutting at 45 degrees. And then ultimately, we're going to make the same cut for 3 different shelves, because I'm going to make 3 here. And this is our final outcome. And since we've cut each end at 45 degrees, it's going to sit flush. As you can see here, here's our first end, and then we'll move right over to the other side, and it's going to sit square with the wall. Next up, we're going to take some scrap 2x4 and set it at 45 degrees, just like we did our shelf. This is going to be how we're going to mount the shelf to the wall, and you'll see here later in the video how this is going to work. So just take a short scrap piece and cut this part very slowly so that this board doesn't jump up out of the saw. And just, again, cut it slow, be steady, and just push it forward. You shouldn't have any problem. These are going to be the wall mounts that we're going to use for each shelf. Each shelf is going to need 2 of these, just like you see here. And so you're going to want to go ahead and cut out 3, or 3 different sets. And the length doesn't really matter so much as long as that's shorter than what your shelf diagonal is going to be, just like you see here. So I just laid it against my baseboards for you to get an idea. These are going to be mounted to the wall, and then we're going to countersink them down just a little bit because we're going to have a top that lays on top of that that's going to sit flush with our trim piece. And now what we're going to do is work on our trim piece that I just mentioned. We need a way to make sure that we also have some support for our top part. Again, this is all going to make a little bit more sense. So what I'm going to do here, our top piece is going to be the same thickness. So we're going to go ahead and take a scrap piece of board, lay it right here on the top of the piece, our trim, and then we're going to make a line. That way we can refer back to that. So just go ahead and draw a nice dark heavy line. Again, this is on the back side that you won't see. It's going to be facing the corner. And then just take your stock wood and just cut you a short little scrap piece of wood. Do the same cut we did earlier, just split it. You could do this with a table saw, but it works perfectly fine with a miter saw. These are just going to be some brackets that mount on the back side of your trim piece. They're going to add a little bit more stability once we put the actual shelf top on there. And again, the length on these doesn't really matter so much as long as it's shorter than your trim piece. It's just going to be a little additional support. But this part that we cut in half is going to be enough for 2 of our shelves. So we'll cut one additional one for our third shelf here. And then we're just going to nail these in. And again, we're just going to line them up with that heavy line that we drew. So here you can see once we put our top on, it's going to be a support piece. That's why we drew the line for these. So we're just going to pop them in really quick. You could screw these in, you could glue them. You really could probably get away without them, honestly, but I went ahead and did this just as an extra step. And now we've got it installed, and it's just going to sit right up against the wall there. And at this point, we're going to revisit our wall mounts, the brackets we made earlier. We just want to take a small drill bit and make a couple of pilot holes so that we don't split the wood once we're drilling it into the wall. Anywhere is fine. I went ahead and did 2 with each of those. And really what's going to happen with these, you're going to mount these against the wall here, and you want to leave just enough room for the face piece that we made earlier to fit, so it's going to be flush with where you want it to actually go. It might actually be easiest just to go ahead and put your shelf piece against the wall and then slide these brackets up against them so you know exactly where they need to line up. But they just need to make sure that they're level because your board's ultimately going to be sitting right on top of these. We've got them mounted to the wall, everything's secure. So we'll take our face piece again, line it right back up, and you'll see that everything lines up perfectly. those two brackets need to line up on your heavy dark pin line that we made earlier, and that way that puts them right in line with your support piece on the back of this facial piece. And then now we'll just take our brad nailer and get everything secured. These nails are going straight into the brackets that we just secured at the side of the wall, and that's going to be sufficient to make everything hold right here. You may want to go back later and add a couple of nails. I'll show you if I did or not. But again, everything's lined up. Each shelf here has its bracket. And now we're going to measure from the corner to the inside corner, and then the same corner on this side to this other inside corner. And so what I have here is a rectangle scrap piece of 1 by the same thickness as the front part of our shelf that we measured out earlier. But we're going to go ahead and make those two measurements that we just made and draw a diagonal. So translate those to the board, draw your diagonal, and then that's going to be a perfect piece that we can use for our shelf. So we've got it cut out here with a skill saw, and we'll just take that back inside. And the first thing you're going to notice is it's not just going to usually slip right into place unless you just cut it perfectly. This is actually ideal because we can just slip it in like this and then hammer it in from the back. So just kind of get everything laid into place as best as you can. Take a scrap piece of wood so that you don't mar up your top, and just kind of knock it into place slowly. You can see here that my walls actually got scuffed a little bit. The corners weren't perfect, but it was fine. I just went back and kind of sanded that out and touched it up with some paint. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to maybe have some paint on hand that you can match with, just in case you have the same issue. But after that, everything should slip right into place, just as you see here. And then you just want to maybe double check that everything's level. It should line up perfectly, just as you see. There's really no sense in nailing that top part in unless you just wanted to add a couple to the front. Another thing you might consider doing, which I didn't do, is on the underside. You can cut a same triangle piece and just put it up underneath so that this top part's kind of hidden. I really don't notice it other than on the top. But all in all, I think this turned out really great. This is a simple way to transform any corner. You can see here that I've already got plants on mine. They're super fun to decorate. Everybody really likes them that's seen them. And I think this is something that you could do pretty easily in your spare time. But if you like this video, feel free to click like, click subscribe. I'll be putting out some similar content in the very near future. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave those in the comment below. All right, take care, guys.